Photographer of the Year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Shelley, otherwise known as Shellda Photos. I feel like that's what everybody calls me. Like, no one really calls me by my first name. But this is the first show of 2025. It's crazy to think that I'm now however many shows in, and we're overlapping a year. So it's cool to see that the show is already picking up. I am joined by an absolutely incredible guest, but before we get into talking about Ryan, I want to just give a quick shout out to my two show sponsors, BFP Gear. They joined essentially from day one when I started this thing. So Junior and Gina called me right away and they're like, hey, how can I support the show? And it's been just an absolute honor to have BFP Gear be a show sponsor. I got a whole bunch of gear from them over their Black Friday sale. Like this, they sent me all the new lenses that JT has. And so I am completely outfitted with BFP gear for the 2025 season. And then also a huge shout out to Hormesis. Same thing. Alex called right away. He's like, hey, what do you need? How can I support the show? And he's hooked me up with a bunch of Hormesis stuff. So it's crazy to think that I'm sponsored. Like I said that in one of my previous shows. The kid inside of me is like, I would have never been sponsored. So absolutely crazy. Thank you so much, BFP Gear and Hormesis. So without further ado, Ryan Greenspan of San Diego Dynasty. How are you, sir? Happy New Year.
Good. Happy New Year. Yeah, I mean, it certainly is, right? This whole off season has been absolutely crazy. It's been a nice last couple of days, not having to deal with guys leaving the team, and just all the other meetings and things like that we've been dealing with just constantly. I guess this has been probably one of the more busy off seasons I've ever had, especially because I got twins now. My daughter's in kindergarten. It's like everybody's growing up, and it's actually funny. I just the other day, I think it was actually yesterday. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, so we got a good squad because we're coming up on our first practice. We're gonna have a little knock the rust off season practice here in Mexico, and I'm like, wow, we really have kind of grown up quite a bit. There's not a single person on the team. Like it kind of not like want a single guy on the team or anything like that, but because we're thinking about Mexico and I'm like, oh boy, I just hope I'm not hungover on Monday or any of the days. And I'm like, you know what though? There's no single guys on the team, so like that lowers the risk of being hungover after an event or something like that significantly. If you got Mikey on your team and you're like, dude, who's gonna go out with Mikey? Or you got like Kyle, you're like, well, not anymore, but Kyle's got to go. But someone's got to go out with these guys. Skinny Kevin, you got to go out with Skinny Kevin. So it's actually kind of nice that he jumped ship because now we don't have to go out with him anymore and be like possibly hungover. Except usually with Kevin, it's more babysitting than it is actually drinking. So it's more of a liability if you drink because you never know where Kevin's going to end up.
I think that's the funny part, right? Is like all the news breaks about like people leaving and people are just going mass chaos of like, oh my God, Dynasty's done. And what they don't know is like that's actually could be a relief for some of you guys that don't have to deal with a headache anymore.
No, I mean, we never wanted look. Biggest thing about Dynasty is like everybody's there for the right reasons. Everybody who's ever joined the team or been on the team has always wanted to be there, and we've obviously wanted to keep them there. The only thing that really motivates people or pulls people away is a big monetary offer, or sometimes I rub them the wrong way. I guess in some cases that's just like a small catalyst that some people will lean on to help justify them leaving the team for a big bag of cash. So that's been a thing in the past, but that's just them telling themselves that. But yeah, for the most part, we want everybody around, especially in the sense of, just joking about Kevin, like he's great.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
But it's like he started the team with us.
Yeah.
We don't want him to leave. And that's the case for everybody.
Hey, podcast fam, I just want to interrupt really quick and say thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Speaking of tuning in, did you know that nearly 75% of you aren't actually subscribed to my channel? So the really quick, easy, and free way to show your support for the podcast is just simply click that subscribe button below. By doing that, I can promise you I'm going to bring you new guests every single week, and I'm going to continue to find ways to continue to improve this podcast. All right, let's get back to it. Yeah, and that's actually one of the questions I had is you're going into, I believe this is the 25th year of the team, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like this is a banner year, and I've heard from you quite a bit over the past few years that you've really enjoyed the aspect of watching your teammates win an event. So I think the recent ones are obviously Danny, I think, won Las Vegas with you, and I think
right.
Chris won his first event a year or two ago, and Harry
Was Las Vegas also, yeah.
Oh, okay. When did that switch for you, right? Because I think we all play the sport and we want to win, but like at what point did that switch where you were more excited to see your teammates win?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think it was very early on. It's always been about, I mentioned it the other day on the show, I'm an only child, so I can do stuff on my own because that's just kind of how it worked when I was younger. I didn't grow up like in a big track home kind of development area. I grew up in an acre and a half of land, and there was one other kid on our block, in like a mile radius. Yosh lived, it's kind of walking distance, but it would be like a Lord of the Rings kind of adventure to get across these rural roads and streets and stuff to head over to his place. So having friends around is always a big factor to me, and I think Oliver shares some of the same similarities. That's why he's so charismatic, it's because like you want to have people around you to like, because it's kind of a new thing, right? Relatively new. I say this as I'm the 25th year here on Dynasty, which is more than half of my life. But just sharing in all of that is, surprisingly coming from an only child who everybody just automatically puts in the category of selfish. It's like sharing in this experience is so fun because it's only super like this, me being in this room right now is only exciting to me to a certain extent. Like, wow, cool. Like, look at the stuff I have. But what am I going to do just sitting on all this victories or whatever it might be, or just headbands or, just like my gold. Right. So it's like, it's this interesting psychology of wanting to actually share in everything, right? You get a lot out of that, in my opinion. And again, contrary to what a lot of people may believe about this selfish only child syndrome, is like, no, in my case, like I want to be around people and share in all the experiences with everybody. So I think it was relatively early on. And again, we came from, let's call it semi-pro, and the divisional circuit, winning quite a bit also. So we were already winning prior to going into our pro season, and then it's like we hit the ground running. I guess much like your podcast, where you're like, dude, you are dialed in. Like everything is, you are firing on all cylinders. You've got guests already lined up. You've got things forecasted, and you're releasing regular episodes. You got like everything dialed in. Like I was going to mention that to you right after the intro of everything. Is like, dude, you hit the ground running, and it's like doing a fantastic job.
Appreciate that.
So it's like we did the same. We hit the ground running. It was like we moved from the rookie novice. It was like every year it took a new step up to the next division or the next rank, and then we won there, and then we did that, and then we had the Iron Kids success, and so we were already pretty familiar with the feeling of winning. So I don't know. I guess to answer your question, I don't know exactly when that switch happened, but I guess you've been in our huddles, you've been in the pits, you've shared in some of the excitement, and you see people like buzzing and like all that other excitement. That's like that's bigger than the plaque that you get.
It is, and I think you touched on it. For me, is I resonated so much with what you just said about being an only child, because same thing. I've been an only child as well, and I think back to like, wow, I've always enjoyed more times when my friends were over, like sleepovers, versus just like playing with my toys. Like they're just toys, but if you can share those with somebody else, like that's where the core memories come from. And yeah, like, I've seen obviously so many of the huddles over the past few years, and seeing the emotion that you guys have, whether you're winning or losing, there's never, of course, sometimes there's heated moments, but like everyone just grabs somebody, puts their arm around them, and like, hey, we're in this together. And so it's been really cool to experience that and see that from you. And, you mentioned the whole, like the podcast taking off. I think it's the same thing for you too, because I've been a huge fan of yours since I was a kid, right? And I wonder if there's something with being an only child where you've got so much time alone that you fixate on whatever the craft is or the hobby is, and you just sink all your time and effort into it. Because I've noticed a lot of my hobbies that I've gotten into, it's either 100% or 0. And it seems like that's been for you too.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's interesting because I definitely half-ass a lot of things. I've got golf clubs over there underneath this big pile of crap over there, and I'm okay with it. I'm pretty decent at it. I've got a lot of surfboards. I kind of dabble in like a little bit of everything, but obviously there's only one professional aspect of my career in my life. But I think that to add to that point, it's kind of like I am certainly all in, you could say, and call it you could call it crazy to a certain extent, because it's like, if I thought back 25 years ago when we were starting Dynasty, and there said to young Ryan Greenspan, 18-year-old Ryan Greenspan, and said, hey, guess what? You're going to be doing this when you're 40. I'd be like, old man, you are crazy. Like, there's no way I'm going to be wasting my time playing paintball my whole life. But in retrospect, like you could argue, okay, what branch of this multi-reality that we live in was the right or wrong path? And that's obviously impossible to answer. But right now, I don't say I would trade anything for anything, right? Because life is great. There's certainly been sacrifices made, but from those sacrifices, there's been beautiful transitions and outcomes. So that's actually kind of interesting to think back on as far as like what you mentioned, which was like putting 100% of everything like into focusing out. Now I don't do that with every single thing that I do, but if I find that I'm good at it, like you definitely want to narrow down in on that aspect and that vein of like gold, of pure gold right there, because spending your life on something that you're not that great on, you're going to burn out easily. But if you find something that you love to do, whether it's photography, paintball, accounting, I don't know. But there's pride in workmanship. It's pride in what you do. If you're really good at something, that you can fall back on that. If you're like, I'm all right with this, I'm not very good at bookkeeping, but whatever, it pays the bills. Like, you're just not going to be stoked at it. So I don't know. I think that kind of like it adds on to what you were talking about. It's like, yeah, I'm 100%. I'm all in on. I'm 120% on this, or whatever exponential increase in percentages we want to go with.
It's true. I mean, you're 100% and more into the show and the brand, or into the team and the brand. Can you talk more about that? Because the Dynasty brand itself is so unique to paintball, right? Like, you've got the Dynasty Champs Club. You've got, I think there's multiple owners that own parts of the team, and so I think whenever these names come up of who potentially people could be leaving the team are. They have weight because they're actual owners. Mm-hmm. So can you tell me more like about the Dynasty brand itself?
Yeah. So, I guess we'll get into a little bit of a history lesson here. I'm just writing some notes down as we're talking, just in case I forget to mention something. But back in 2001, when we started the team, it wasn't like any type of corporation or anything like that. Chuck Hench just kind of got us all together. We came up with a name, and then around 2003, we formed an LLC group with all of the owners. And we had no idea what we were doing. I think we were in college. I was in college, and I think I was taking a business class, and I was like, yeah, LLC, that's great. I think
sounds cool to be a business owner
twice. But we're like, let's start this business and let's start this company. And we were highly successful back then. And I was the older of the group, which was, I think I was maybe 19 or 20. And we had guys like Johnny and Brian Cole who were a year or two younger than us. And yeah, we just formed this highly successful company back then. And we, obviously being younger, and I guess you could call it hip, at that time we were, I don't want to even say technologically advanced really, because I think Wi-Fi had just been invented. There was no social media. There were no cameras on your phones. I remember I got an ex-girlfriend of mine, because I was loved cell phones, got me the first color flip phone. That was the era that we grew up in. And so once the social media aspect of it came along, I was the first one on the team to get Instagram, and everybody was making fun of me for it. So shout out to actually a big plug to Bear Digidio, because he was the one who was like, you need one of these things. I was like, all right, well, I hate that. I can't stand it. But we ended up becoming, because we were already had this marketing background, essentially, because we'd been marketing ourselves, or selling our likeness rather, and then being very close with all the marketing departments of the biggest companies in the industry. And actually, it's an interesting segue as well. We'll talk about it a little later. Is one of my first major sponsors was JT. And that was also my first job in the industry, is I worked weeding the little vinyl names out of there. And so I worked in the art department underneath Don Widmer and Luis. And those are the two most iconic marketing people in all of paintball. And I could still argue today. And so I was working in that room with those guys, watching, they would take film photographs. They would put them onto these little tiles, and then and I was watching them as they made all their ads and all that stuff. And so I was there, and then I was in the photo shoots, and we were doing all that stuff. Actually, I was just looking at one of those old ads the other day, because I've got a bunch of old magazines. And so we were kind of in that marketing kind of cog already, and we were being used as that marketing kind of brand, we were the brand. And so the business kind of exploded. And we realized okay, we need to start something to help our fans. And we actually originally started something called the Dynasty Winner's Circle. And it was because we were sponsored by the magazine PGI, and you'd fill out back then, because again, there was no website, there was no email, that stuff just it existed, but it wasn't that's not how you did it. So in the back of the magazine, you would tear it out, you'd fill out the piece of paper, send a check for $25 or $35. We would then send you a t-shirt back, and you'd be here, you're part of the winner circle. And so that was our first foray into it, which is kind of a couple years back, we were trying to figure out, because it's always been after, 2007, the financial crisis, 2006, 2007, when the money kind of started drying up. There was Smart Parts went under. They owed us a significant amount of money, but they went bankrupt. And the team at that point needed to figure out ways to fund itself, because we've always been team funded. Okay, there's no dues. We just funded ourselves based on our likenesses, and then our ability to win made the team more marketable. Okay. And then on top of that, we were also the first team that was again, team owned. And we were also became marketable because we were not grizzled old men that smoked cigarettes and then drank whiskey and beers while we were playing and fought people like that. We weren't any of those people, which is actually another funny anecdote I'll tell you about when I met Dave Cheney for the first time. I'll come back to that one. Excuse me. So we kind of learned how to market everything and brand everything. And so we there's an interesting parallel that you could draw between us and the HK Army guys, where we're both players, but we were focused more on winning. They weren't as good because they weren't as focused on winning. They were focused more on they were a little more rambunctious than us, I would say. But they built their brand around that rambunctious kind of attitude, and they went down that path rather than being we should try to we should really take this seriously and play paintball. They were let's just sell this lifestyle. Whereas we were the cut, clean, approachable kind of branded people. And that's kind of where the avenue that we took. And they're a big successful branded company and we're a big successful team. But the biggest motivator for us is we've always fought to make sure that everybody on the team is able to play, and when the team can field a competitive squad at every single event. And so the most recent iteration of our branding was the Dynasty Champions Club, which is kind of that full circle that I'm trying to draw here, which Alex kind of brought up. He's like, hey, look, this fan clubs are like a big thing in a lot of other industries. And I think that there's a market that we can tap into. And rather than just kind of like saying, hey, a handout, like, hey, let's join this t-shirt club, or you give us something and we just say, you're cool. Thanks a lot. We decided to make it more of and this is kind of, I think these gift box ideas started becoming very successful, where you can, pay $100 a month to the man club and you get like an axe and and a flint stick every month or something like that. Or you pay $150 a month. Yeah. The beard oil club, the Dollar Shave Club, like all these subscription models. And I follow a lot of these business blogs and stuff like that. And the subscription model is by far the best model from a business standpoint for a multitude of reasons. But the retention is the biggest thing for us. And we don't want to just be like, okay, well, hopefully people sign up and forget about it. What we want to do is we want to create the best experience possible for our fan base, because we do truly care. We get guys who are like, oh my gosh, you guys are still playing. Like I played when I was in the 2000s, and then I went to college because then I couldn't afford paintball. Now I've got a kid and a good job, and I'm back, And so we have this generational fan base that we can relate to. And so with that Champs Club, we've got these intel sessions every month where we just kind of like, we wanted it to be this informative kind of aspect. We're like, yeah, we should do this where we like, kind of like teach something every time. But it ended up, and I want to say devolved in a good way to this, like, it's a hangout. Right. So for the first 20 or 30 minutes, we're like catching up with all the guys and like, hey, how you been? Like, what's going on? And Alex cracks up all jokes. We make fun of a couple things, and then we recap what's been happening over the last month. And then we pivot into some sort of like theory in the game theory, or what we're thinking about, or like something really cool like that. And it's a really cool 1 hour hangout with the team where we, everybody's active in the chat. There's a Q&A. There's like all these other cool little things. So that's one of the many ways we reach out. And then on top of that, we send out a pretty cool gift every month, as you've seen. And they've been getting better and better. And that's actually a fun, tricky thing, is to like keep the gifts fresh, keep them cool, do a good mix between a paintball gift and a non-paintball gift, like something that you could actually use in your everyday life. If you're not sponsored by Field One, you don't have to use the Field One AccuLock kit, or you get it this month, and you can do what you want with it. And then there you go, a little beanie. We got the cards, we got hats, backpacks. Like, there's a lot of really cool little things that you get that you're like, oh wow, like, this is actually useful. There's a camping chair that I fold up and use at the park all the time. I love the towels. But yeah, anyway, so the idea is to create this fan club where you've got access on multiple different sides. We send players, or members rather, we send our members a gift that is Dynasty branded. So then there's more Dynasty branded items out there in the ether, in the world. And let me move this thing down a little bit. And then it's just a cool hangout, and we absolutely love it. Like, we love the interaction. We've got that VIP experience at every single event where we're like hanging out with everybody. There's waters where we got webcasts going. World Cup one was actually really cool, even though it's not directly on the field level, because you're just like, you're eating pizza with Oliver and Harrison and Ryan. Like, you're sharing some stories with all this stuff. So it's actually such a home run in so many different levels that I can't say enough about that. And so yeah, that's one of the multitude of branding kind of things that we got going on.
Yeah, it's been so cool to be around the Champs Club, because I've obviously a fan of the team, right? But like, being now on the media side of it, I have an opportunity where I can see the interactions, because I'm trying to capture the interactions. And I can tell like who's a new Champs Club member versus like somebody who's been in it for a few years, because they walk in and they're just like starstruck. They're like,
right.
That's Ryan Greenspan over there. That's Oliver Lang. And then you've got other people that come in and like, you guys are giving each other hugs and embracing. And so it's just so cool to see the vast, the width of it. And as the events progress, to see those new people become more comfortable, and then they have conversations with you, and you start to build that relationship, and that small community becomes a family essentially. And you look forward to seeing that, like somebody that I deeply care about is Patch. He lives in the UK, and the guy flies across the world to be around Dynasty. I didn't know who this guy was a few years ago. And now I get a text message like a week before the event. He's like, "Hey Dan, what candy do you want from the UK?" I'm like,
loves the candy.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to point out, like, we have undoubtedly the best fans in the entire game, and I could argue that, like, across all sports, we have some of the most amazing fans. Out of, like, it doesn't matter, insert sport here. Because of the team's longevity, it allows the team, like, anybody who stopped, like, let's use Patch for an example. Like, he played like so long ago, and then he was a collector, and then he's still able to follow paintball. And then he's not only that, but he's able to be a part of it to a certain extent, like with us in the pits. And we always encourage anybody, like even Steve or Chris or Patch or any of the guys come, and we're like, dude, why don't you, and even Vic the other day, I was like, Vic, why don't you just take time off and just go to the event and just hang out in the VIP, because again, a lot of people are like, we want to work with you guys in the pit. I'm like, you don't get to watch any of the games. You're like head down, like doing this work. It's like, why don't you guys take a load off? Well, I'll Patch, come, obviously, but I don't want you I want you to have a good time, but again, that's like, there's just so many cool things about, it's just so many great things about the 25 years of Dynasty that lends its hand to having some of the most loyal and just amazing supporters.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. There's no other, and I've thought a lot about this when I was researching for this episode. I don't think there's a sport franchise out there that has won more, or has been more consistent, or has had a very close roster as Dynasty, right? And when you talk about all these guys that are coming in, they're flying on their own dime just to literally work for 3 days and not watch the team, but just to work. I think where a lot of that comes from is these were fans for the last 20, 25 years. And when they were younger, they dreamed of like, man, I wish I could do that. I wish I could make it to that level. And so I think what they think at that time is I would do anything to be around that. Right. And I think where that comes from for me, I don't know if you know this or not. There was an event, I think in the early 2000s in Connecticut in the Mohegan Sun Arena.
Yeah.
It was like the Smart Parts 3-man or 5.
Yeah, it was a 5-man indoors. Yeah. Smart Parts World Championship.
Yes. I was a huge fan of the team back then, and I lived 20 minutes from the casino, and I would have died to be there. And my friend at the time was a photographer, and he was like, "Hey, I'm actually going to the event. If you write a news article, I can get you on the field." I've never written an article. I was in middle school. And so I figured out how to write a news article for my local newspaper. And I was actually in the pits with you guys in that like box, that green box. And I was just starstruck. And I think that's what a lot of some of your pit crew goes through every time they're in there with you guys, is they're just, it's an honor to be around such a storied franchise.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's support, because again, one of the big things is because we aren't funded by one mega donor or mega owner or whatever you want to call it. We're funded by the fans and the supporters and our ability to appeal to brands like JT. And that's super powerful. And the fan support is what does it for us.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell, and you can tell by just how passionate you guys are when you see the fans too. I do want to go back because you touched a lot on when you first worked for JT of the marketing piece, and I look at you as obviously, I think you're one of the greatest of all time on the field, but I think your off the field smartness, I don't know what the right word is, your off the field awareness, I guess, is next level, and I don't think people understand that. Like, you've got such a marketing mind, and I've seen it back from when you used to do your vlogs, like, right, when we didn't have cameras or like cell phones, like you were still marketing yourself and the brand, and I think HK back then. Does that resonate with you of like how much of a content creator you actually are?
Yeah, I wish I had more time in the day. Um, yeah, I love doing those vlog things, but no, I guess it kind of comes naturally and easy, but also at the same time, it's out of necessity, right? There has to be this level of relevance, and I don't know if I ever saw that or heard that somewhere, or it's become much more clear lately to a lot of people. But it's like think of it like I think maybe actors are more uh, in tune with this type of thing, where like in order for Tom Cruise to sell out theaters in whatever movie he's going to, he's got to stay relevant. So he's got to make good movies. He's got to do the appearances and all this stuff. Not like I'm a Tom Cruise or anything like that, but the relevance aspect of that is incredibly important. And again, taking it back from like when Dynasty had his down year, 2016, when we first finally didn't win a tournament in a year, but even 2015, it took us up to World Cup. Like that's when relevance begins to fade slightly. So there needs to be an influx of promotional tools and aspects that keep us in front of people. Now, because people love you when you win and people hate you when you win. So you begin to get this that people are like, "Oh, yes, Dynasty won." And then they're like, "Well, okay. Well, we're enough of this, enough of this. Let's get someone else win. I don't like these guys. Brian's an asshole because they keep winning." It's like, uh, you know, um, but when you don't win a lot, people are kind of like they begin to they're like, you still got it, like the dragon's still great and you guys still got it and like this and that, and there's this supporters, and then there's like more people on the top of the thing trying to pile us down. The guys who didn't like us can get up on top of this bandwagon, they can be on top of their pedestal and try to push you down, which is it's sports, whatever. People don't know us, but we have feelings, but whatever, it's fine. We've been able to deal with this in a long time, but that's when you need to find how are we going to stay relevant, and how are we going to, because if I'm not in the finals or I'm not even on Sunday, what are we going to do to keep our fan base lit, the fire lit there, right? Which is always, we always have the biggest signings at every single event, but we're making sure that we do a team signing every single event. I don't know if Impact does one. I don't know if X Factor does one. I don't know if Damage or Houston Heat, those guys. I mean, X Factor I think is a little bit different, but for the most part, Jason has his hate brand now. For the most part, those guys are complacent because they're paid organizations. They're not there to win together. They're there to win because they're paid to win, right? And there's a big difference because we're there for the fans. We're there to win for everybody else around. And that's, again, going back to why everybody always wants to be on our team. The guys that are there aren't there like, I'm dreading this. Like, I don't want to go to this event. God, they're just paying me enough to be there. Like, there are players in the league that are really good, that are playing on top level teams that are like, that's their mentality. That's their thought process. Like, I don't really care about these guys that much, but I'm getting paid a lot to do it. So you're going to lose a lot of that. That's why there's no connection. And so when you build a brand around people and X Factor, again, I'll point them out because like at least a lot of their guys have longevity and they've been there for a long time, and then there's a brand around them in that local area. But there's teams that like who knows if there's guys going to be on their team next year, so there's no marketing dollars. So why would we even invest time to create a giant poster of Mouse or I don't know who else flip flops around a lot? But like there are guys that are habitual to be moving around. So if there's marketing dollars poured into that person, you're like, well, crap, man, we just wasted our time. And so yeah, like staying relevant is incredibly important. And I guess, yeah, I noticed that from a while back, and a lot of the marketing side of things, it just kind of makes sense. Right. And again, I'll just point out that I'm in my 40s, so I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, but like, recently I've seen a lot of, obviously doing the podcast, I'm taking in more podcast content so I can, help grow myself. And I stumbled on something the other day, and there was some like 40-year-old or 50-year-old real estate guy, and he's done very well. And he said, I think one of the trends that we're going to see over the next few years is we're going to see content creation being part of people's financial portfolio. And he was telling a lot of his older friends that are starting to retire, he was like, you really need to figure out to do some type of content because it can drive revenue for you, when you're retired, whether it's a podcast or it's doing videos or selling something or whatever it is. And so it's cool to see that like content creation is now, it's such a big part of our world. And it's something that I think everyone can do it. We all have a camera in our hand. We all have a camera that has a microphone. And so it's been really cool to see how you've evolved from doing those vlogs and now doing like, I think the partnerships, right? Like I just saw you post something with one of the new.
The Go 360. Yeah, it's a cool camera. I mean, I've been on these marketing sites for quite a while where people would reach out based on my following, and Kyle Berry actually has always pointed this out, but I'm the only paintball player that is recognized by Facebook's algorithm. So you can so brands can actually market to people who like me, not just I like paintball, I like San Diego Dynasty, I like, whatever, insert this, but you can actually, anybody who likes Ryan Greenspan can now be targeted. So it makes it a little more valuable. And I've actually learned on that one relatively quickly that I want to pick and choose the brands that I work with, not just like whoever pays me, whatever supplements you got, this and that and this and that. And I kind of learned, not the hard way, but after doing some research on a couple of the companies, I'm like, you know what, this isn't working. But that's actually a really cool camera. And yeah, the content is funny. I was just working on some pieces for them. I remember it just being kind of like, okay, they were really controlling over a lot of the stuff. They're like, oh, you need to tweak this. I'm like, come on, like this guy, like, Jesus, this is looking great. Like, everybody's gonna love it. Just let me fire this off. But yeah, it's you're right, and to touch on that content creation side of thing, like, again, my generation is kind of our generation, right? Is kind of the very, very tip of. I mean, there's some definitely technically savvy 50 and 60-year-olds who have bought into the system, but anybody who's grown up like 10 years prior to me or even before that is going to have grown up with this exponential increase, and by the time they're our age and 60 years old, the people are still going to be creating this content, and who knows what it's going to be like in 20 years. But that whole aspect will grow and again get larger and larger and broader as we make our way and everybody ages up into that area. But there's actually this interesting not stat, because I don't know the stats, but this interesting thing about models as well, where let's call it, and because I had a friend that modeled quite a lot back in the day, or now still, but when you're young and hot, and that's great. When you're in your late 20s to like late 30s, you're like, all right, you can still get some work. But as soon as you get into your 40s, as soon as you start getting gray, they're like, boom, fire up all the old people stuff, because now we want you in the high end, like these are the people that we want to market it to. And paintball's not quite there, because it's not like I can market too much stuff to 40 and 50-year-old people. It's like, hey, check out this knee brace. But there are other facets in other industries where you can take, like as you exponentially increase, like you said, there's stuff that is going to cater to older people online, and discussions or real estate stuff, or all this investment stuff is really big on YouTube and stuff. And on top of that, that's what pays the most right now for YouTube CPMs is investing. So if you just start blabbing bullshit about that, if you guys want to make some money, that's where the money's at. We want to pivot this conversation to investing.
Yeah, we'll talk about how to invest in paintball.
Yeah. Don't invest in paintball.
Yeah, exactly.
Buy these stocks.
It's been cool to see, because like, I follow a lot of other content creators outside of the sport, and you can tell when they partner with a brand, like, oh, they're just in this for their money, because they're not passionate about whatever the product that they're using. And you've done a really good job of the brands that you have worked with. You can tell like, oh, okay, like you enjoy this, or like you incorporate your family into it. And so you, as a consumer, you feel more apt to want to purchase that, which of course then helps the creator.
Yeah, I think there's a company called Perfect Food. There's a company called Perfect Foods who there's like an organic grocery delivery service, and it was all branded on like the stuff that couldn't be sold in grocery stores. They're a little too small. And I always call them like, oh, this is a really cool company. And they reached out and they paid me for activations, and I was like, this is great. I want to say they gave me like $1,000. I think I probably paid them that back like tenfold at this point, because I've been a customer of theirs ever since they sent me my first free box and my check. I've been ordering from them every other week, and we get every 2 weeks we get this organic grocery delivery, and it's actually relatively fairly priced. It's cheaper than it's the same price. It's not cheaper than going to the grocery store, and it's pretty cool. and it's with all the kids, you know, you're like, oh, crap, we went to the grocery store. I'm like, all right, we got food coming tomorrow.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, it just makes it easier. So it's it's cool to see, like, from doing that, you're also being exposed to other brands that you wouldn't have been exposed to before.
Sure.
So,
no, I like that for sure.
Can you tell me, kind of in the Dynasty brand, like being a creator, what does your Monday through Friday look like? Because you do this essentially full time.
Yeah. So, let's see. So my wife, Camille, fiance, but I just call her my wife at this time. She works Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for about, part-time, like 4 hours a day. So my daughter goes to school at 8:30. If I'm lucky, I drop her off and I go surf for an hour or two. Lucky means that the wave's good and can I go surf? But I also just add that to, like, this is my workout time. I'm either going to go to the gym, which I don't like doing, which I'm probably not going to do. I've never done really. Or I'm going to go get my exercise with surfing. So I may as well do that. So hopefully every morning, if I can drop Sloan off and then go surf and then come back and watch the boys. But it's in between now with the twins, things have changed significantly because it's a pretty big time suck. If we're lucky and they're both sleeping at the exact same time, I've got like a 20-minute window to catch up on laundry, which we have a lot of, catch up on a lot of emails, and then any content that needs to be creative set up for Tuesday's Pick and Span show, shipping out products for that, shipping out any other products for people order jerseys or other little things. I do my best to answer every single message that comes into me from fans on Facebook. I run, and I don't do a very good job of it, but my Instagram and Facebook, along with Dynasty, Field One, and then I have another brand that I work with that we just launched a product with another business, and then it's in the aquarium industry, and that's about a year old at this point. But and then Junior also helps me so much, helps the team. Actually, he does 90% of the Dynasty media, as you know. And every so often, I'm like, Dan, dude, did you have any pictures of me, man? And I call you by your first name.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It actually means a lot.
But it's just kind of like, at this point, it's getting as much done as I possibly can. I also just started a role with JT and Core. So I'm going to be, as some of you may have already seen and heard, the brand ambassador, also working as a field and store liaison. So, if people are on the fence about, joining, setting up the field with GI Paint, like, hey, look, how about Ryan goes out to your field, does some content, does a clinic, does something like this, and then, shows you and tells you all about how good the GI Paint is, and what what the benefits are of having a good quality paintball at your park. So that's kind of like, not direct sales, obviously, that the sales reps are going to be handling that, but helping to kind of like a liaison or helping with creation of relationships and whatnot. And so it's kind of an evolving type of job, but brand ambassador is kind of really where we're starting out and kicking things off to get people signed up for the Imperial program. Also going to be really working hard in, like, telling the story again, just like this full circle story. The very first, I remember buying my first cotton JT jersey, right? I remember when I won World Cup in 1998 as amateur B, the very first ever sublimated jerseys in paintball were released that World Cup. The Ironman were wearing them, like Image was wearing them, Shock was wearing them. And for winning World Cup, JT was like, you're a JT team next year, put these jerseys on. And I was like, whoa. I was 16 years old. So I've been sponsored by JT ever since. Obviously, we had a stint. We were with Empire, we were with HK, and that was told in the story of us signing back with JT a couple years ago. But it's kind of cool to come. Like, and that was my first major job in the industry. I worked in a local paintball shop, obviously, when I was a kid. But yeah, it's cool because, like, again, like I was telling you that story about working in the marketing department, and like, again, I was weeding out the names. If you ever got a jersey, if you're a pro team or even most teams, you got a jersey in like 2001, and the name was printed on the back. Most likely I printed it weeded out every individual little thing on the vinyl, pressed the vinyl, did all that. That was my job, So it's really cool to kind of come full circle and start working now in a more digital media age. And I'm going to be working closely with the photographers and the marketing department, and just trying to give my input where people will have it.
Man, that's like if, whoever ran the marketing department back then, if you could tell that person, or if somebody told that person like, hey, this Ryan Greenspan is going to be a sponsored player, we're going to bring the team on board, and 25 years later, he's still going to be there. That's like a dream come true for a marketing agency.
Yeah, right. And so his name's Don Whitmer. He lives in North County, San Diego. And I just talked to him the other day because I said, hey, guess what? I'm taking on a position for JT. Do you have any of your old ads? Because I want to bring back, and Mark Lackey's doing such a good job there. So I call him Mark Lackey. There's a Mark Lack on Dynasty. Jared Lackey. Mark Lack that used to play on Dynasty. Jared Lackey. Jared Lackey's doing such a good job right now with all the design and the artwork, and he's kind of bringing back that throwback. Because again, JT's it sits on the shoulders of nostalgia, right? Like people can't wait for the next new cool thing that pays homage to what the brand used to be. Again, there's so many different things. Billy Stransky was telling us about. There's a new, frame that's going to come out later in 2025, and they just released the clears, and like they're doing these birthstone things, and so they're releasing these limited edition stuff, and that's still it's still a collector's market, and they're bringing like the banana logo, like this is just like so iconic, and so Lackey's running with that, and he's created this whole old jersey flow, and it's like, oh, that's really cool, and it's like to a T, exactly. Like he got all the jerseys, and he went through there, and he meticulously, broke down every part of it, and we're even talking about bringing back the original fabric.
Oh wow, like the old heavy stuff.
Yeah, like the heavier, the heavier stuff. Again, making like a limited release of. I can't promise that happens. That's just sure what we're talking about. And even doing like old mock turtlenecks, like how cool would that be? Sublimated mock turtleneck things. Again, the beauty of the brand JT is everlasting, and all the brands under the core umbrella, like Tip Tipman. Everybody started playing with Tip Tipman.
Even today, people are still starting out with that.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think my second paintball gun was a Tipman SL68 too. Couldn't afford the semi-auto versions back then, but we didn't really need them back then either. And it's cool because there's gonna be like all those stories will be told kind of throughout this year with Yosh doing it and Lackey, and they're assembling a really great team under the core umbrella to hit home and pay homage to the brands.
Yeah, it's been, JT for me has always been like my dream company that I've wished I could have worked for. Mm-hmm. And I know we talked about this before the show, and I don't know if I can say anything or not. So sorry, JT, but I'm bringing my brand to JT for the 2025 season. And man, when I got that call, it was just like, I literally had goosebumps now thinking about it. And I went back into my mom's archives of just all of her old photos, and I literally had 3 pictures from when I played paintball when I was a kid, and one of them was my first ever jersey, and it was that JT red, white, and blue like flame jersey. And so you guys did that for the Champs Club recently.
Yeah, we did that as a Champs Club gift. I don't know where mine is, but yeah, those are cool.
Yeah. And so to be a part of that nostalgia again, and been working with Jared on my designs, it's just been it's been a dream come true. And you're right, he's crushed it, man. Like I think my logo on my jersey, I think it's got some of that old school banana look to it. And so it's just been a complete honor. So it's gonna be cool working directly with you.
Yeah, I'm glad. I wasn't sure if you're gonna. It's got a great team of people, a bunch of schmucks.
So it'll be fun to work alongside with you and represent a brand that obviously means so much to you, and it means so much to me too, because it's always one that I've aspired to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes without saying that the brand carries a lot of weight, and people are stoked on it. I mean, I think Joe Barrett was like, man, I can't wait to put flexes on. It's like guys are so excited to get back, and we were too. Like the HK guys have done a really good job with everything they've done, but man, putting these there's a reason that people love these goggles. They're timeless, and they're just so nice, so customizable. People like to customize things. People need to realize that.
I've actually, what's the guy's name? It's like Mikey or Melky who does all those custom Hormesis bottoms. I think the ones that you wear were custom, right? Like they're painted.
Yeah, mine are done by, I believe it's Andrew Kelty. Yeah, so he does these kind of like these painted frame ones. We've got a bunch of different types and I've got them everywhere. I've got all sorts of stuff everywhere.
Yeah, one of the guys is working on. So actually, Alex sent me one or two like custom Hormesis ones.
Yeah, those are cool.
Oh my gosh! And so like it's cool to be out there with a ProFlex that no one else has because it's unique to you.
Yeah.
It's just like sneakers. Like you wear a pair of sneakers and you go out to the mall and you're the only person that wears whatever that pair is. It's that kind of flex. So it's
a big time. And that it was funny because back in the day, well, obviously the autocockers were the thing, the high end marker that you could customize and put every little tiny thing onto it. And then back then there was also the spiders, right? The Kingman brand really tricked those things out if you wanted to. There were so many mods. It's funny. The first company that we worked for, Yoshi and I worked for this company called Specific Paintball that turned into KAPP, Kick-Ass Paintball Products, and they were like a custom shop. They made custom everything, and it was just kind of neat.
Yeah, I remember KAPP. I remember
really?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I remember seeing like the KAPP ads in the magazine and like the different shirts. And I think you guys had jerseys at some point too. That said like
they were KAPP jerseys. I think we had moved on from them at that point. But yeah, if you got a KAPP product between like in any whatever those little clamshells or the heat press things, that was me and Yosh put it in the package, stapled it up for you.
That's wow, that's wild. There's
a shop. Oh, good.
No, go ahead.
Oh, there's a shop in Aruba. The only paintball shop in Aruba, and they have, I mean, you got to blow off the dust on these things, but they have like old everything. Like they must have ordered these things 30 years ago. Like there's ancient products in this place. It should be a museum. And I'm like, if they're on the shelf, I'm like, I don't know if anybody's going to buy this thing, but this is pretty cool. This is like a museum. I was like, I put this in there. It was either me or you. I can guarantee you.
And it hasn't moved.
Put this in there. We dust this for fingerprints. It's either mine or his.
You heard it here first. If you want Ryan Greenspan's fingerprints, go to Aruba.
Yeah, go to Aruba and go to the shop there.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of Aruba, you've traveled literally all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't even know if there's a country you haven't traveled to yet. You've done everything from creating content to starting brands, winning everything that there is to possibly win. Have you ever like just sat back and reflected on any of that? And if so, like what are some of those things that stand out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially lately, well, by lately, I mean the last 6 years where I haven't traveled as much because I've now started a family, but I most certainly reflect on those type of things, and Camille and I were just talking because she never really traveled internationally until she met me. And we did Australia, we did Japan, we did Bali. We've just flown to Bali too. But we've done a couple of things, and it's obviously way more difficult to travel with a family of 5. Everything is, they don't even make hotel. It's anyways. That's a whole other story. But I most certainly kind of reflected on that a bit because even when we're trying to plan a travel trip or something, I'll be like, hey, let's go here. She's like, well, you've already been there. I go, oh, it's good, And we've recapped like a lot of the fun and kind of lousy trips, and I think on one of the one of the more recent episodes of the Speak and Span show, Alex mentioned something about kind of remembering things in adversity, right? And I've always been a big proponent of this. Like I the 50 times that I've been to Europe kind of all meld together as like, nothing special, nothing fantastic, whatever. But I can certainly tell you the time that Blake and I climbed this mountain in this like tsunami rainstorm. That rain was coming sideways. We got lost up there. We weren't supposed to go. Like these crazy adversity types of moments that you'll always remember. It's a pretty funny story that you made it out alive.
Yeah, I mean that's it. It's all about the story, right? Like I think
Absolutely.
everyone always gives Tom crap for like, oh, it's going to rain at a Texas event, and like when it happens, yes, it sucks in the moment. But I start.
How about those pictures?
That's it, right? Like I start to catch myself as like, man, this really sucks. Like whatever it was, Chicago, I think last year when it downpoured.
Dallas.
It was there was an event where I got a picture of Harrison. It's on my wall where he's diving at me. It was Chicago, and I remember vividly like, wow, this is absolutely miserable, and I'm going to be cold and sick for the next few days. But you know what? I know looking back at this, like I'll never forget it. And like that kind of propelled me to push through and like just go embrace it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, giving up is easy. I think that goes without saying. And this is, I had this theory a long time ago about, this new generation of people who are offended by everything, but it comes down to the ease or lack thereof of perseverance, right? You've got to be able to push through or persevere through times of adversity. And if you don't ever put yourself in these lousy conditions, and it's so funny because I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. I was in Africa, and someone, I think Blake or somebody was like, "Hey, we're gonna go on this hike." They used to do this hike every year. I'm like, no, don't like hiking. I certainly don't like camping. Like what you do this? And like a lot of and I go, I don't want to go on this like 5-day walk and be uncomfortable the entire time to see like another lake and then this and then that. Like I'm sure it'll be profound things, but like unless there's this crazy peak to climb, like I don't know that I prefer to sleep in my bed. I liked camping when I was a kid. I will go camping when my kids are old enough to want to do that. But I know that, and I'm realistic with myself. But I've done it, and I've pushed through, and I've conquered this, whatever it might be, and I've chosen that it's not for me. So I can, respect that people do or do not like things. But what I don't like is people giving up and crying about an experience that they didn't really experience to the fullest extent, And again, I pointed out one time, it's like, for the most part, any really lousy experience is going to be it's going to be pretty funny later, with the exception of like death or serious dismemberment, like you broke your arm, you broke your leg, you broke something. It's like, oh, it's kind of funny, right? My buddy just fell off a ladder a couple weeks ago, and it was pretty serious. And as we're like, oh yeah, let's try to make it. I was like, hey, is your ring camera on? And he laughs and goes, dude, I was so pissed. Ring camera, I just went and charged it, but I fell right in front of it, and I was knocked unconscious. He was on the ground for 30 minutes. He had to wait for his wife to get home to it was pretty serious. But I guess the levity of it kind of rises when you're like, oh hey, I'm going to make it out of this okay. Right? Could have been bad, could have died, but I didn't. And let's either be like, oh, poor me, or like, it was actually kind of funny to think about it. Like, I shouldn't have been climbing on a ladder on my roof by myself. Maybe not. And you can also think back on like all the bullets we've all dodged to a certain extent by doing something very stupid. And you're like, oof, I'm glad I made it out of that alive.
But it's a story now. It's something you can always cherish.
Yeah. But pushing past adversity and persevering through difficult scenarios and situations is a character building. And if you just kind of turn the video game off and throw the controller at the TV and out, that's not adversity. And that's going to propel or it's going to create a propensity for you to lean on that type of habit and bow out easily or complain more easily or file your complaint or like be offended easily. And it's like a pretty scary thing that I think that like this video game kind of mentality where like people aren't very tough. I mean, I'm not that tough, but I can get through anything. I'll make my way through it,
Yeah, it's video games is like a really interesting topic, and like people are so passionate about it, and there's both sides to it. Like, people can say you can pull from video games because it brings community together of, friends online, But then, like you're saying, it also makes people not be able to fight through some adversity sometimes. And so it's, yeah, video games, we could spend like a whole nother podcast on that.
Yeah.
What so you're being a recent new dad again with the two boys, what advice would you give them when they're of age to, like, if they want to travel the world and do, you know, all the crazy things that you do, like what would you tell them?
Yeah, let's do it. Let me know if you need any recommendations. So I think that, you know, it's just, you got to experience things, right? Like, I can be pessimistic or optimistic about a place. You know, had terrible times in Paris for 10 years, and then I just went there more recently, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, it's a little nicer when you're an adult, or it's a little nicer because I can afford a slightly nicer hotel. Or these places have become slightly more Americanized, and more space in these rooms, or something. You know, insert whatever it is, like traveling up for a paintball event versus traveling to hostels versus traveling with your family and friends. And I think Airbnb changed the game quite a bit with a comfort level in different areas, especially if you're traveling with groups. But I think you just kind of have to go experience for yourself. If you want some recommendations, I'll do that. And, like, stay away from this area, yeah, probably. But absolutely, I think you need to go out there and try to experience things for yourself, rather than, you know, definitely don't take the experience that you see on social media and be like, oh yeah, this is great. I mean, Egypt. Let's talk about Egypt. It's a great example. You're like, wow, look at these pictures, and this is like amazing. And then you get there and you're like, why didn't anybody tell me how lousy of a place this is? Where were all these pictures and this and that? And, like, there's trash everywhere. I think maybe dead bodies on the ground. Like, that place was epic and amazing, and a 10 out of 10, and then a 0 out of 10, like when you turn your head to the left or the right, you know? And I've seen these Instagram versus reality videos a lot, and they're pretty funny. And it's actually really telling, because you're going to this place, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. And you have this, like, preconceived notion of this perception of what it's going to be. And then you get there and you're like, expectations are all the way up here. And then all of a sudden the lights turn on and the girl's makeup is, you know, just running and not what she looks like, you know. Like, there's so many analogies that you can use there, but you can't take things for the hype. You've got to go out there and experience it and try to be as open-minded as possible. Otherwise, you're going to find a lot of duds.
Yeah, that's actually something I go back and forth with, and I struggle with a lot, because, like, Amanda and I, we love to, like, go explore, you know, new restaurants here in Austin and, like, just find different, you know, spots. And it's so hard because you'll see something on Instagram, you're like, oh, that looks so cool. But then your expectation is already here because you just saw 15 seconds of, like, the hot stuff. But when you get there, you're like, man,
it's called a sizzle reel.
It's not real. Yeah. You know, so it's almost like I don't want to know what it's like. I don't want to see it. That way I can walk in and experience it myself for the first time and make my own impression on it. So I totally relate where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to say, like, sound like old school, but honestly, like, Yelp reviews and Google reviews and things like that. Like, when people are like, oh, where should we eat? Where should we eat? What should we do? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's just look around here. Like, hey, this one's got 4.5 stars. This one's got 5 stars. Like, let's go to the one that has a lot of 5-star reviews or higher. It's probably going to be good if this is the type of food that we want to eat, or if this is the type of activity or attraction, rather than being like, we have to go see this thing that I saw on Instagram or social media or whatever it is. And then you get there and you're like, man, the colors just don't quite seem the same here. And it's like raining and you're like, ah, damn it, I just walked all the way over here, you know? I mean, it's funny, just pulling back to, because I just said rain again, like, pulling back to the story of me and Blake hiking this volcano area. I'm sure that there's photos and videos of that place, and it was absolutely awe-inspiring and jaw-dropping. And we got up there and it was like the rain was coming sideways, and we're like, ah.
There's the Instagram versus reality right there, you know?
Yeah.
You get to the payoff and you just get smacked in the face with the rain.
Dude, it was bad.
That's great. One of the things I think I hear every single year for the past, we'll call it 24 out of your 25 years, is people like, when's Ryan Greenspan going to retire? You know, you're the ageless wonder, I think some would say. I think a lot of people obviously fantasize about retirement, like working in the corporate world, like, man, I'm gonna retire at 40, 50, or 60 and just ride off into the sunset and pick up a hobby. I'm sure you've thought about it. Have you put some effort into what you would like that to look like whenever retirement is? We're not saying it's going to happen now, but like, would you want to pick up a clipboard or own a team or a franchise? Like, what would that look like for you?
Well, I do already own a team, which is kind of nice. That's a really tough one, and just pivot it to working with JT hopefully that goes very well and very healthy and productive, and that's something that I can kind of scale up a little bit more. Retirement's such an interesting concept to me because I feel like, and I mentioned this to a couple friends in the past. I've lived such a fortunate life, being able to do exactly what I wanted to do, and it's afforded me to be able to live near the beach in California, which is a very difficult place to earn a living and provide for a family in because of the high cost of everything. I'm sure that 80% of your listeners can kind of chuckle at. Not to mention we have earthquakes and everything else, but you know, I've kind of been living my life backwards, which is also a funny analogy or metaphor too, because a lot of people call me Benjamin Button sometimes. But I've been living my life to a certain extent backwards, where I've kind of been not retired. Like obviously, paintball is extremely difficult to do and stay at this peak level. But I've been doing something that I'm extremely passionate about and I love to do, and it's been fantastic and it's been fun, and from the outside looking in, you're traveling, you're making money, you're doing things that you love to do. It just seems so nice. Where like again, when you think about retirement, for me, it's not doing really any of that stuff or as much of it. Rather, there's obviously as I possibly continue to grow in this core environment. I can play big games for the rest of my life.
That's a dream.
And I'll go out there and represent the brand to the fullest and schmooze and all that. So I think that that's still on the cards, but I don't know about coaching as much. I definitely don't know that I'll ever leave this Dynasty organization, which is, a fruitless, selfless job of making sure that the players on the team have a comfortable, are able to play in a comfortable light. No one ever left to share a bed is my main goal. That was from Iron Kids in 1998. But that's an interesting question, and obviously that question in the back of my mind creeps up more and more after every single year, and especially at the end of every single year when things, it's like, oh, body's a little sore. Things this year has been taxing, and people are leaving, and people want this or this squabbles, and obviously everything when it's going great is going great. Not going great, and for Dynasty means that we're not winning every single tournament, which is very difficult to do. Then obviously that voice back there kind of is like, hey, what are you gonna do next? What happens if this? What if that? What if you got like guys like Kirill from the Russian Legion or the Red Legion and Oliver are like, we should probably start to take a step backwards and let other guys play here. You need to like cultivate the next talent. And I'm like, yes, we do. But we also kind of need to keep winning. And I'm ready to take a step to the side or off, as long as there's a body to fill my position. And that's why I'm really excited for the addition of Kyle and Joe on the team, is because there's more bodies that are in my position. And then we've got, Danny, who's more than capable, and he's got a full year under his belt. Because again, it took Harry a full year, a little over a year under his belt to like really find his groove. And Danny's already really good, and we've got him. And I think the team's like almost in a better place right now because it's been shit. The number, like the starters have been shaken up a little bit. Two of the starters, Archie and three of them, Archie, Chris, and Marcelo, have all stepped to the side, and the team becomes a very difficult team to play on when you've got myself, Archie, Chris, and Marcelo playing nearly every single point, and then you got to beat Arturo out of that fifth body. And we've got Yosh, who's insanely good, and his knees healthy again, and you saw that at World Cup for the brief times he played. And Blake, which Archie did such a good job at World Cup playing that middle that we're like, okay, well, Blake, we're gonna get you in there. Like, we need to get Blake up there. We need to get Blake up there, and we have such a talented and tremendous team, and we all push each other, and I think that our team, it's built around, it's like the competition is so high, and it's so awesome to see that. And Blake kind of mentioned something about iron sharpens iron, and so we're going to focus a lot more on that, and with Junior and Mike, and just being more goal oriented at practices and making sure that we have like this checklist of things that we need to get accomplished rather than being like, all right, let's put some more points, let's put some more points. All right, we did 30, well, let's get out of here. Kind of that's where some of our mentality was sitting last year. And we're like, all right, well, we're going to do this at the same thing over. We're going to do the same thing again. Okay. All right. But, I like your retirement question. I don't know. I guess I'll retire when it needs to be, or when I find that other hobby that I'm really good at.
Yeah, whenever you find whatever that thing is to sink all your time and effort into.
Yeah.
But I think, just touch on a few things that you said. When I saw the Kyle Berry pickup, and then when I saw him, I think it was on the Intel session, he just reminded me so much of a younger version of you, because like you could just see how passionate this kid is and like how bad he wants it. And I could see him being, around 20, 25 years from now and still, running his own brand or being a part owner in a team or somewhere. He's just got so much fire. And so it'll be cool to see like how he takes shape in the team and see what kind of role he has. And I actually sat down with Alex last week, and he brought up the exact same thing that you said. He was like, I was ready to take a step back and take start to kind of step behind the team a little bit and push some of the guys forward. And he was like, but with some of the roster moves, it kind of reinvigorated me to, I've got to get back out there and keep representing my fans and, the team.
I do want to point out that he was the one out of all of us that played the most video games as a younger kid. So it makes more sense that he's more of a quitter.
Or the flip side, it's been in his reserve. He says his tank hasn't been emptied yet.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He's dove into the tank so many times that he needed to take a little bit of time off. No, but I love the fire that the chip in the shoulder that's grown on him. And yeah, he was taking a bit of a step back, because he's got a lot of responsibilities. I mean, outside of paintball, and it's interesting because paintball's like this big release for a lot of people. It's like something that originally a lot of people do. We did it because we all wanted some friends. We wanted somewhere to call home and people that would accept us. And it's interesting because paintball will accept like Johnny Perchek the jock and Alex Frazier the artist and Ryan the only child and owner and Oliver the prick.
It's true. I mean, it's everybody.
It puts all of us all together in this melting pot. But a lot of people see it as escape from reality, right? Much like I guess video games could be as well, but it's more face to face, more adversity, I think, in paintball. But it's that escape. It's something that you can kind of like take the stresses off of life to a certain extent. This is a release. A lot of people find it that this is a great way for me to blow off some steam or blow off some stress or whatever it might be. But getting around with friends and Alex taking a step back, I understand in a bit why he was doing it. And again, this is something that Oliver has voiced to me is kind of like, hey, let's let someone else take over. Let's let someone else in the door. And I'm like, yeah, I want to shepherd. I want to be the shepherd of this new player, but I don't want to not win. So I want someone to take my job. I do. I want to be like my dream. I don't want to call it my dream, but like one of these visions in the future that I have is me standing there like rooting on the team. Like, yes, what do you need? And so, Alex, I think kind of maybe took that maybe just a tad too soon because it was 2 years ago he was an MVP. It's like he's extremely good, and there's he was like, these other guys I'm gonna let these guys have it. So let's go and have it. Now he's like, F these guys. I've got these. I'm gonna bring it. And like I've prefaced this, or I've mentioned this before. There was this documentary about Tiger Woods. There's a 3-part documentary on Max HBO. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not a big Tiger Woods fan by any means.
I'm not either, but it's a story. Like you can relate to somebody. Yeah.
And it was like the first episode. It was kind of like, did Tiger Woods sign off on this documentary? It's kind of like harsh on him. And then there was like his infidelity and this and his like substance abuse and like how good he was. And then I think in the 3rd episode, it was like, and he like totally just turned his back on his like caddy and like all this stuff. And he's kind of like not that good of a guy. Obviously, he's the antithesis of Alex. Alex is a great guy. But there was this one part in there where it was the new age of players, and they were playing at the Masters, and they're like, I wish I could play Tiger in his prime, like see if he could beat me. And then this pundit was like, yeah, like, yeah, right, you do. Yeah. And then he beats everybody at the Masters by like some like insane amount of strokes. He wins the event, and everybody's like, "Holy shit!" And Alex it's the same thing, like people are probably like, "Ah, great, I'm playing against Alex, whatever." Like, wish you could have played against him in his prime. Like, no, you don't. Like if you want to lose. So hopefully, this chip on his shoulder is like that. I told him this story too because we had a long talk, kind of after all this off-season nonsense was happening. We wanted to figure out what we're going to do, and he's like, "I just want you to know that like I'm committed to this, and I'm going to take it seriously. I'm going to play a lot. Paintball field. Him and Yoshi field 25 minutes away from where they work. Maybe even closer than that. I'm like, dude, if I had a paintball field 25 minutes away from me, I'd be unstoppable.
Yeah, I'd be there every day, right?
Yeah. All right, kids, get in the car. I'm turning on dog mode. And Dad's gonna go play paintball for a little bit.
Hey, that Tesla life, it pays off.
Yeah, it does. It does.
I've really enjoyed seeing that part of Alex is like that kid comes out and he jokes around, but then like in a snap of a finger, he can turn it on and be super serious and dedicated. And so it's really cool to see him going through that shift as he's also finding, another part of him too.
That's right.
So
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, man, this has been so incredible. I've ended all of my shows with something that one of my favorite podcasts does is there's a show called The Diary of the CEO. And he ends his shows with he allows his guest to ask a question to the next guest without knowing who the next guest is. And so I've got a question for you, and I'll tell you who asked it after you answer it.
Okay.
This question is, and it's open-ended, what is your most treasured memory?
Man, my most treasured memory? Yeah, that's tough. I think it has to be at this point, because it obviously is fluid because it's memories are made every single day, but it has to be something recently with with the boys and Sloan and everybody like together and Neil and everybody's just laughing. I've got this really nice park up the road that it's got. I can argue it's one of the nicest parks in the U.S. It overlooks the ocean, the bay, Mexico, the city. You can see on a clear day. You can see well into Mexico. You can see the ocean and everything. It's just like a 10-acre park. It's not huge. And it's beautiful. And we were doing these kind of concerts in the park over the summertime, and just having a blanket out and having the dogs running around and the kids are just laughing now. And Sloan is just sprinting up and down. Like when she was a baby, I would run up and down the hills with her, and just working out, kind of like let's stay fit. And so I think those types of moments are amazing. Or just at the beach. I guess this is kind of like the same type of theme as far as the memories go. It's just like the whole family together and being whole. That's I think important. It's something that I didn't have when I was growing up. And so, I think that's incredibly memorable.
That's awesome. Wow. That's, I'm glad you went with that so Alex actually asked that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I asked him, I was like, do you want me to ask the next guest, not knowing it was going to be you? Do you want me to ask them to be paintball specific? He was like, no, wherever they take it. And so I'm really glad you went that route.
So now I have to come up with one, huh?
You get to ask the first question of 2025. No pressure.
Well, let's keep it with this perseverance kind of aspect. It's funny. I had created I gave this big speech in front of a real estate group one time about kind of like tailored around perseverance. It had to do with our sailing adventure that we did a while ago. But I would say in the face of adversity, what was the biggest challenge that you had faced, and what is it that motivated you or allowed you to persevere in the face of that challenge?
Wow. That's deep. I love that. These are the type of questions that I love because it gets players to think, and it also gives, I think, fans and listeners a look into players that you would have never even been able to hear these questions, right? So I'm glad we're starting to get into some deeper questions and getting away from.
That's great.
Yes. I don't know if you watched Sal's episode. He asked for his next guest was, is cereal a soup or a chowder? And so ABJ had to answer that question.
A soup or a chowder?
Yeah.
I guess it depends on how soggy it gets.
Exactly, right? So
that's like is a hot dog a sandwich, and is a burger a sandwich?
Well, so recently here in Austin, Texas, we've got tacos everywhere. Somebody said you could potentially make the game that a hot dog is a taco too, because it's in like a folded piece of bread.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, I don't know if I want a hot dog flavored taco, but
I think I've had one.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Is a bacon wrapped hot dog?
What's say again?
A bacon wrapped hot dog in a taco shell?
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah, they're all over in Mexico.
That's.
I haven't actually. They should have them on a stick, but I'm sure you could just wrap just to be able to make it more of like a finger food.
Yeah, you heard it here first in the DCC tent this year. We're gonna have
one of the gifts that's gonna show up on your door is a bacon wrapped hot dog taco.
It's gonna be great. So cool, Ryan. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. You're crazy busy with the family and in your business, and it means so much that you were the very first guest to start off whatever this year is and wherever we go with it. So I can't thank you enough.
Well, hopefully it's a good one.
It'll be great. So good luck to you.
It could be your story.
You're right. Whatever fumbles happen, it just becomes part of that journey. So, well, hey, Good luck to you and the rest of the team in your 25th year. I'm excited to see where it goes. And for the listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Shellda Podcast, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.